Sometimes it seems so difficult for us to understand some very small, important things. We seem to miss them at times. I don't know why we do. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter who you think you are. It doesn't even matter what you've been doing. And I'm not talking about sin. Sin is a whole new different story when you're talking to the disobedient. I can warn them and I can do everything within my power in prayer to pray God really help them to come to the place that they need to come. I have no benefit in their going to God, none whatsoever. They do. I have no benefit in any way, shape, or form for your life to change except for you. Because I'm not requiring you to follow me. I'm not requiring you to do anything with me. I'm not even requiring you to believe me. But I am a person who God definitely did speak to me and say that once you hear it, it comes out. The truth is so powerful, it will affect your life whether you know it or not. And many, many times, and I've seen it so many times you don't even notice, you don't even know. And then something will come along and God will speak to you. He will open up your understanding and He will bring you to a greater knowledge of the truth. I think, like I had mentioned yesterday, in all of the people that I ever ministered to, very few were completely, and I mean completely, delivered. I know of only two, and there were thousands. I know of only two where they were no longer fighting demonic forces over their life. Uh, they needed some understanding how to protect themselves, how to keep it from coming back, how to keep it from touching them. And that's what I'm about. That's how I can help them. But to actually be delivered, they were delivered long before they ever met me. But because they had been indoctrinated with thinking they couldn't get it here, they couldn't get it there, they didn't understand here. And so when they hear the truth, it does something inside of them that is so great they become what God wants them to be. Because it's the truth that sets them free. And you can't give the truth unless you have the whole truth. Partial truth is not enough. It will only take you so far. So how do you think it's going to take them? And there's nothing worse than falling down in the middle of the stream and being pulled backwards. You might think that you could handle that, but I'm telling you, I've been there many times. And I understand the way God told me always. He understands you. He knows you. He knows you inside and out. And when you do foolish things, silly things, things that have no meaning, things that he really can't use and doesn't even want, he doesn't hate you for that. He doesn't beat on you for that. But he doesn't pat you on the back and say, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. Just keep going on. He doesn't do that either. He'll warn you. He'll warn you as many times as it takes. He will warn you over and over and over again until you force his hand where he says he will have mercy and not sacrifice. Because when you have to have a sacrifice where something has to happen to stop you from doing what you want to do, when he's told you and revealed to you over and over, don't go there. That's not where I want you. Don't do that. And you feel it and you know it. But that flesh is so powerful. And instead of immediately, when you feel that, instead of immediately pleading the blood and fighting it and crying to God and telling God, I'd want to die before I do that. I'd rather do anything. Don't let me go there. You can see it coming. Many of you are grown enough in the Lord that you could actually see your if this was something you shouldn't have picked up and you're picking it up and it's not a sin, but it could lead you in the wrong direction. And because it's not a sin, you keep playing with it and playing with it and examining it and playing with it. But eventually it takes over subtly, very subtle. You have no idea it's doing it. It seems to now stick and you can't let go. You want to let go, but you can't let go. And that is because when he was talking to you and you were feeling convicted and you were feeling that this was what you shouldn't be doing and you were feeling conviction for it, you should have stopped then. But because you didn't, it gets harder each time. But I promise you, the moment you make up your mind, the moment you stand there and say, I don't care what happens, I'm not going there again. I am not going to do that. Lord, save me from that. Save me from ever touching that again. Save me from taking steps backwards. Save me from this, Father. Don't let this happen to me. Save me, Lord. When you say that to God, you've got something. We take the power and the control off of God. And and we actually have to ask him to save us from that particular thing. It hasn't become a sin yet. You're just tempted to it all the time. But in order to keep you from being tempted all the time, to keep you safe, he wants that completely out, and you have got to pray it out. Otherwise, eventually, those little baby steps backwards, you are going to get hurt. And he doesn't want you hurt. He wants to keep you in balance, walking the way you need to walk. He wants to take you to the next step, to the next thing. He doesn't want to waste this time with this. He wants you to know how much he loves you. He wants you to... I'm sorry if I'm yawning, but I get very little sleep. He wants you to know. He wants you to come to him with everything. Everything. When you feel that awareness that this is wrong, that's when you go. When you see that, when you feel that powerful awareness, you know you'll touch something and you'll say to yourself, well, I'm not really doing anything wrong. This is harmless. And you play with it. I can give you a real example, but you'll get engaged in something that you know the end of it is going to lead you into sin if you keep doing it. So what you do is you do everything to avoid it and still have what you're looking for your own pleasure. And it never works. Dump it all together. If you are in doubt as to whether you should be somewhere, do something, say something, never do in doubt. Never. Don't take one step forward of any kind. Drop everything. Stop everything. Put a halt to it. I am not going to go back there. I am not going to allow this to happen to me. By my choice, I am choosing you, Lord. I hope this helps some of you, because some of you get too comfortable. Some of you think because you know more than the next fella or the next person, you know more, you can handle more, things are going to be because you're something. No. None of us can ever afford to be in that condition. I told you, I live in a place of peace because I watch and I pray over it very carefully. And when I feel it, even a little bit, I won't let it come. And that's what you must do. That's where you must be. Because You won't be able to say to God, well, you didn't tell me, you didn't show me, you didn't reveal, because He's always there to do so. Because He said He'll never leave you nor forsake you. He will be with you always, even unto the end of the world. And He will strive that long to bring you to the place you need to be. And He wants you sanctified. He wants you set apart and made holy for Him, so that when you do walk and talk with Him, you could hear His tiny whisper. You know, when you go to bed at night, or when all is quiet in the house, can you hear Him whisper? Or do you hear that knock ever so lightly? That's Him. Go immediately. Just like the prophet did. Here am I, Lord. Isn't that what Eli told him? That when you hear that, go and answer. Here am I, Lord. I'm ready to hear anything you want. For God calls you. And some of you don't ever notice, and you don't ever go, because the knock is so gentle. He's not blasting it. You know, even Elijah, when he said, when it needed God to speak to him, God didn't show up in the wind. God didn't show up here. He didn't show up in the big way. He came in a wee, small voice. Instructions often come in a very small voice. They don't come necessarily with, you know. How many times God corrected me and redirected my mind by that small voice. I had told you when something like 35 years ago when we suffered a lot of problems. And, and I would pray, I've got to leave him, Lord. And I even tried, and I told you, God healed him of alcoholism. And I tried, and I tried. And I'd even go, God, get him a girlfriend. That way, according to your word, I can leave. But God knew I was so foolish, I didn't understand what I was saying. Thank God He never did that. But I wanted every excuse to leave. And when the door seemed open for me to do it, God would not let me do it. The word kept coming to me. And to this day, I'm going to be married 60 years in January. And I'm telling you, He promised me, He said, real wee small voice. There I am crying, begging, upset. And like I said, we were probably only married 20 years. And there I'm begging him. And he said in a small voice, Marion, don't leave him. One day you will thank me. As hard as it seems now, you will thank me that you didn't leave. Now, if he would have beat me, I would have left. God would have never spoke to me and said, stay. If he was psychologically torturing me to the point I couldn't handle it, God would have taken me out of there. But God never gives you more than you can handle. And He taught me to be kind, to be sweet, to be understanding at all times. And if you think I was perfect when I worked and labored to do that, you would be wrong. Because I was never perfect. I labored so hard to kill the flesh. I did. I wanted it to die because what I wanted was so important to me. And I had to leave go of it. Just like you do. I don't know what you're hanging on to. But whatever it is, you must never let it be more important than God. And then you have to think of it like this. When you have arguments, whether it's with your mother, your father, your sister, or your brother, or your husband, or your wife, those arguments, stop yourself and say, is what we're arguing about more important than them? And you're going to come up with the answer, no. That's why you never, ever continue. Once God talks to you and stops you, stop. How many times I went right up to him and said, okay, I don't care about anything that was said, anything that was done. You are more important than that. I value you more than that. It didn't matter what he thought. I wasn't looking for that. Love doesn't look for anything back. What I looked for was for him to get the help he needed. But to love me back, to, none of that. That wasn't why I did it. I did it because agape love does that. The love of Jesus Christ. He paid a price for you, asking you for nothing back to get into heaven. The only thing that he asks you to do is to allow your flesh to die so he could get in, and that's all for you. It has nothing to do with him. So it's not for him. He's not asking you for one thing for him. I hope this little talk has helped somebody. I'm sure it has, somewhere.